Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. From the world of music comes one of the most popular and influential albums of all time, a milestone record that spoke to a nation struggling to make sense of a senseless foreign war while also trying to recognize the opportunities to improve life at home. We're talking about What's Going On. What's Going On is the 11th studio album by Marvin Gaye. It was produced by Gaye and was released by the Motown Records Tamia label on May 21st, 1971. The album was recorded between June of 1970 and September of 1971 at Hitsville, USA in Detroit and the Sound Factory in Los Angeles. The original release included 9 tracks, with Gaye being the primary songwriter on each track. Gaye used musicians from Motown's wildly successful Funk Brothers, including Eddie Brown, Jack Ashford, and legendary bass player James Jamerson. What's Going On was a concept album with every song interwoven on the album, telling a story from the perspective of a soldier returning home from the Vietnam War, only to find America in chaos. Gaye addressed many of the day's top issues, namely the war in Vietnam, and also problems on the home front like drug abuse, poverty, and the environment. What's Going On was an instant success upon its release, staying on the Billboard charts for over a year and becoming Gaye's second #1 album. It was certified platinum in the United Kingdom and gold in the United States. The album has been hailed by critics and fans alike as one of the most important landmark records of all time, with high rankings on best of lists from major publications like Rolling Stone magazine, which ranked it at number 6 on its 500 greatest albums of all time, with the title track being ranked at number 1 on the 500 greatest songs of all time. It was chosen for the National Recording Registry by the Library of Congress. Thanks to its political, sociological, and ecological themes, What's Going On remains one of the most important and relevant recordings of all time, and a true classic that's loved by fans all over the world. And that's the lowdown on What's Going On. The 6M podcast has been a thing now. We are in our 3rd year as we record this. Season 3, as I'll call it. So yeah, it's been a thing for a little while now. Depending on when you listen to this, it could be not long after it's released. Could be years from now. Who knows, kids? I have no plans of taking the show down. So yeah. But we've covered a lot of things here on the show. And of course, music is one of the M's, as everyone here knows. And back in December of 2020, myself and Nathan, my co-host, did a 2-part episode called Tom's Time Capsule 20th Century Music. We did a part 1 and a part 2 because it was like 9 hours. It wasn't really 9 hours, but it sure felt that way. And we laid out rules. We each had to come up with our list of, top 20 albums of the 20th century. And we had to start at a certain time frame. I want to say that we started in 1950, I believe, and went all the way through, of course, to the year 2000 and then stopped to make it fit. I mean, we're going to go 1900. You see what I'm saying, kids? Stay with me here. So we each did a list of 20 albums. And then what we did was we put our list together and we started going through the show. We each had one veto that we could veto off the guy's list. And it was automatic. You couldn't fight it. And then we each had one that we could protect with our lives. I did both. All right. And we narrowed it down to 20. And yes, this is the list. Time Capsule, the 20 greatest albums of the 20th century. Don't argue with me. You're all wrong. Actually, you're not all wrong. It's all subjective, kids. Relax. Take a deep breath. It'll be okay. One of the 20 that made the cut is an album that we're talking about here today on this episode. And that album is What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. Why, you ask? Is it in the time capsule? And again, if you listen, kids, you hear the title, you figure out what we're talking about. It's a time capsule, right? What are the 20 greatest albums you would include on this? And we akin it to like the like a spacecraft, like Apollo missions. We're going to put this thing in orbit, and we're going to show the aliens. You can only pick 20 to be in the time capsule on the ship. This is what we did. You have to include What's Going On. It's a landmark album. it's an historic album. And that's not one guy's opinion. That's a lot of guys and gals' opinions through the years. This thing has been rated number one best of all time. I think it's still number one Rolling Stone's best album of all time. Or excuse me, the magazine Rolling Stone, number one best album of all time. I think it still has the rank, and not just that publication, but a lot of others. So yes, that's the album we're deep diving on today. Phil, as we kick this thing off with this quintessential Marvin Gaye album, um, is this an album that's in your rotation? And if so, how often do you listen to it? And how long have you personally been attached to this album?
It is an album in my rotation, but it has to be I have to be in the mood for it. And that's not to say that it's one of those albums that is too much of a downer, and so you got to kind of be in the mood to want to. I have to be in the mood for it just because the circumstances of how I discovered the album and a lot of my formative memories with Marvin Gaye.
Hmm.
Um, I growing up, Marvin Gaye played in my household a lot, and so um, my mother passed away when I was 19. And so there are a lot of parts of his album that I listen to, and they definitely make me think of my mother. And so it's sometimes difficult for me to listen to just because I miss her. Um, but it's still one of those albums that I feel like it is. I don't care who you put it on in front of. People will enjoy it. You don't have to enjoy all of the social commentary of it, just the instrumentation of it, uh, just the overall, tone of it. There's no way anyone anywhere could say that this is just not an enjoyable album.
Yeah, I agree. I don't care what race you are, what gender you are, where you're from in the world. How you don't enjoy this album is absolutely beyond me. I don't understand that at all. Yeah, it's a classic, man.
Yeah, I definitely think that it is one of the most important and iconic albums ever.
Yeah, and it's got to be in everybody's list. It may not be in your top 10. It's got to be on your list though. Um,
Yeah,
and and the episode I referenced, Phil, the time capsule, just so everyone here knows, we didn't rank these songs, dude, because that is a task in and of itself. We didn't rank the albums, I should say. We just threw them all in the time capsule because I'm not going to be the guy to say what's number one. It's not going to be me, dude.
yeah.
So this album released May 21st, 1971, recorded between June and September of 1970. The studio, Hitsville, USA. And unless you've been living under a rock your whole life, Hitsville, USA is Motown. Because that's how we roll here, kids. Again, we cover the classics here on the 6M. Dude, let me ask you this. There may not be a good answer to this. Well, maybe there is an answer. Can this album have been produced anywhere else? I mean, you could make the argument Stax, maybe. You could say uh, certain other labels, possibly. I mean, this Motown album, isn't it? I mean, who else could have done something like this that would have known how to handle it and put it together? And man, I don't know if it could have been done by another label.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it could have been done by another label, but I also realized that it was pretty different from a lot of stuff that Motown was doing at the time either as well. Like I because I do think that they made um music with social commentary through like Stevie Wonder or other artists, but this album is just so drastically different from a lot of stuff that they were putting out.
Yeah. I mean, produced by Marvin. We have to note that. Um, I don't know if I knew that, if I'm being straight with you. I think I always assumed Quincy Jones produced this album. Did you know who produced it?
Um no, I didn't think Quincy produced it. I don't know who I thought produced it, but I don't know if I knew Marvin produced it. Um, because I feel like Quincy stuff has a distinct sound. Even I'm not saying it all sounds the same, but you can usually tell his touches on a record.
That's fair. And we've covered Thriller here on the podcast, kids. Go look that up in the archives. Um, yeah, that's fair. The musicians on this album, man. I mean, just the sound. I mean, just the first track, and we're going to get into the tracks here soon, kids, but James Jamerson, man. If you are a fan of music, especially if you play the bass, let me just tell you, James Jamerson is an effing icon. And
Yeah.
his
I mean,
story is, dude, is extremely sad the way things went for him in the end. But dude, his playing is second to none, especially on this album.
yeah, for sure. I think having the Funk Brothers on this definitely sets this album apart.
And you know, the problem back in the day, kids, in case you don't know, studio musicians were often not credited on these albums, often not credited on the songs. So a lot of times they didn't get, I'll say, perhaps proper compensation, recognition they deserved. So Jamerson, I'm sure, played on a lot more songs than he ever got credit for, which is a crying shame because, again, the guy was an absolute genius. I just imagine him being on the same in the same recording studio as Marvin Gaye. That's just that's mind blowing. I mean, two masters at what they do. Oh, dude, before we get into this I had this thought the other night when I was putting together notes for this. Um, we've gotten Ray, we've gotten Walk the Line, we got the Doors. You know where I'm going with this. We've gotten Queen, for lack of another example, for a movie. I mean, we've got some amazing biopics through the years. Got the Elton John movie. I mean, dude, where's our Marvin Gaye film? Why has this not happened yet, man?
Uh, I don't know. That might be up to his estate.
Ooh,
Uh,
good call.
I don't know. I do think it's an interesting story. It could be also just the way that he passed and how some people might
Mm,
not want to touch that story.
that's
I don't
fair.
know.
It was a gruesome, gruesome death for sure. I remember when the news hit of what happened. It was shocking. I don't remember how old I was when he passed, but dude, absolutely shocking what happened to him. Like I can't even put it to words. I remember it because my mom was a big fan as well when I was growing up, and um, I remember when he died, it was like she was just she didn't know what to say. Like it came across the news. I want to say we were sitting there watching it. I'm like, my God, what are we talking about here? Um, Shot and killed by his father. Um, because, dude, I'm wanting to say that there was. I could be getting this confused with someone else. So forgive me if I am, but I remembered a story of a hammer being involved. Am I thinking of someone else?
I don't know. Um,
Man,
maybe.
I misremembered that.
Yeah, I don't want to speak on it because I'm not sure. Uh, yeah, I don't remember all the specifics of his death, but just when you're touching stuff like that and families involved, and you know, I I can see not wanting to touch it or being careful about the subject matter.
That's fair. I mean, if that's what prevents us from getting a film, I mean, I guess I can understand. I think it's still a shame because I think that you get the right actor who can sing and really do it justice. I think that we're talking about what could potentially be a great movie. Something that comes to mind when I think about him is Eddie Murphy in Dreamgirls, portraying James Thunder Early.
Hmm.
Um, honestly, and this is maybe hard to do with the cast of that film, which was insane. I think he stole the show in that movie, dude. I really do.
No, yeah, I've always felt like he got robbed of a Oscar for Best Supporting Actor that year. Uh,
Absolutely, absolutely.
because he played this great like amalgamation of James Brown, uh, Marvin Gaye, and all these other like popular black artists just kind of rolled into one. And he did it all so extremely well. We don't see him do a lot of serious acting, and I thought he nailed all of the stuff where he needed to be serious. I thought he was great in all the stuff where he needed to be entertaining and charming. Um, yeah, I thought he absolutely stole the show.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It makes me want to go back and watch it, and I haven't watched it in a long time. And I probably should have watched it on the way to this. So I've got the album in my ear, one of my ears right now. Um, and I got to get into this because I'm listening to Jamerson playing bass on What's Going On. Dude, the next time you listen to this, just try to drown out all the commotion at the beginning and listen to just the bass line. It is absolutely freaking phenomenal. He is such a master. I can't stop raving about him. We're going to dive into this, kids. There are, on the original release, there are 9 tracks on this album. We're not going to really cover reissues or whatnot. We just like to stick to the main actual release here on the 6M. That's what we're going to do here today. So let's dive into this. The first track runs for 3 minutes, 51 seconds. It's a classic among classics, Phil. This is the title track of the album, What's Going On. Written by Marvin, written by also Al Cleveland, who was a Motown songwriter. He also wrote Second That Emotion, or co-wrote, and Baby Baby Don't Cry performed by Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. Yikes.
I don't mean to cut
What a
in, but
talent, man.
we might be in luck. It sounds like they're making a biopic. I don't know if they've cast Marvin yet, but it sounds like there's one in the works.
Shut up. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
Warner Brothers has, according to this article, Warner Brothers has landed Alan Hughes to direct a Marvin Gaye film, What's Going On. Alan Hughes, of course, is one of the Hughes brothers that directed Dead Presidents, Menace to Society. And it's being produced by Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine.
Well, you got the right team behind it sounds like.
Yeah,
wow.
This could be good. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, dude, you got to hold your breath on some of this stuff, man. I mean, otherwise you get the Queen film, which still blows my mind. I mean, the band was on the set. They were, they had a lot to do with it, but of course, because they had a lot to do with it, it was the film's view of Freddie was tainted by their view, by their experiences. So we didn't get Freddie Mercury's take on anything, which sucks.
Yeah. Very, very very mixed bag of a movie. There's some things about the movie that I really like. I think that they couldn't have cast a better guy to play Freddie. I thought he did a tremendous job.
Yeah.
I think that all of the guys that they cast as the members of Queen look like who they're supposed to look like, and they fill the role. But there's so much stuff that, as a longtime Queen fan, that they left out, and stuff that I just felt like they kind of did a disservice. And I, of course, could get into like really nerdy Queen things, like how I felt like they don't talk about Freddie and Deacon's relationship at all in the movie, and they were really good friends, and I feel like that's missed. I feel like you don't really get an idea of who James Deacon is as a person at all in the movie.
And Deacon was Roger, or why am I thinking Roger Deacon? Is that right?
Roger's the drum player.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And Deacon is the most bland, I think. Like,
he's a bass player, and I think people always get this idea that the bass player is the least interesting guy in the band. And
second, yeah.
But which is of course from a joke from Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Like, you're a bass player, you're kind of the least interesting guy in the band. But no, Deacon wrote some of their best songs. He's written some of their most well-known hits. He wrote another one, Bites the Dust. I don't know. I don't feel like we get enough of an idea of who he was. And I think that was a missed opportunity. I don't like the way they handled Freddie's sexuality, but I don't want to digress too much into my Queen fandom and things that I was displeased about with the movie. I liked a lot of what they did with the music in the movie. All of the live performances were great.
Oh, for sure. And as we said, John Deacon deserves a lot of credit for being a very, very good bass player. And just the bass line to Another One Bites the Dust, while it's relatively easy to play, it's iconic. Like, how many people can say they've written a bass line that will never be forgotten? Like, that's one right there. Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I think, Phil, this is a shining example of how a movie can not get it quite right.
I mean, Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, they gave us that amazing recreation of the Live Aid
Oh,
performance.
down to
Um,
the down to the wardrobe. Everything was perfect on that.
Everything was perfect except them trying to pretend that Freddie had AIDS at Live Aid and didn't tell his band members, which is just not true. I don't know why they
Hmm,
put that in the movie.
insane. Um, well, yeah. I mean, if the Marvin Gaye movie happens again, here's hoping that they nail it. But so the first track, what's going on? We could spend an hour talking about this song or spend 5 minutes and it would be fine because there's not what can we add to this that hasn't already been said? But man, is there such a thing as a perfect song? Because man, if there is, I can't find any fault in this song at all. Nothing. The composition, the instrumentation, the lyrics, his vocals, which I don't think he ever sang a bad song, if I'm being straight. His voice, holy God. Dude, this song's a masterpiece. I don't know how else to say it. What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I agree. It's a masterpiece. I think it's definitely one of his signature records. Um, it does a great job of setting the tone for the album. Which I didn't know for a long time that this album was a concept album. Did you know that?
I did know that, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm just used to for a long time either just hearing the songs separately, or I've always heard a lot of the album growing up, but I just never put two and two together until I got older that it was a concept album. Um, possibly possibly one of the best concept albums of all time. Um, but I think that what's going on is so great, and what this song and by extension the album does so well is it gives you a message, but it never feels contrived, and the music is just so, how do I want to put it? It's so inviting. It's so peaceful that it
Mm.
never feels like, oh man, I'm stuck in the message. Like even if you're not listening to the message of the song, it's such a great groove that you could just throw this on a car ride or something,
Mm.
and it just does what it does. Like you could just be at home, like doing nothing but like reading a newspaper or something and cut it on, and it's perfect.
It is perfect. There's no doubt about it. And you mentioned concept album. It's a great way to put it because you know you think concept album, you immediately think Pepper, Sergeant Pepper. It's concept album, but like no, it wasn't. It really wasn't. It was a mode of songwriting they were in at the time. But John was the first one to say these songs have nothing to do with each other. But we connected them, and people said that they were a concept album. They really weren't, but we just rolled with it. And that's very John. That's a very John thing to say and a very Beatles way to do things. Like, well, if that's what they say, let's just do it. I don't care. Let's just record it. So that's what they did. But no, this intentionally a concept album. I mean, and it's described as being gone into a circular structure, which I completely see that. One song does bleed into the next for sure. But dude, this song is the anchor. Take this song off, Phil, and start it with track two, What's Happening, Brother. Just start with that and just go 8 songs. It's
Hmm.
still an amazing album, but it's not what we know. Like, does this album not quite get the roses it deserves if what's going on is not on it?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm not sure. Uh, I, this was just such a different time because I do think a lot of people that decide to make an album or a movie or any kind of creative work with a message. Sometimes I think um, people have decided that, oh, they're gonna do something woke, quote unquote, which I hate. I hate the misuse of the word woke. I hate it.
Yeah.
Um, but people just decide, oh, somebody's gonna do something, conscious. Like when people started making conscious rap, like people took this as this intentional thing, and I never felt that way about this album. I never felt like Marvin went in the studio and decided, oh, I want to hit everybody across the head with this message. No, I felt like he came in with things he wanted to say on this album, and he did it in a very natural way.
I agree with that. I have asked myself, in fact, very recently, upon listening to this album again, like end to end in one sitting, there are moments when he's speaking the words instead of singing them. there are moments when I'm thinking, I wonder if he caught any flack back in the day. Did anyone come at him like, what are you, a preacher now? Is that what you're doing? What is this? Like, I don't know the answer to that. And I don't
Yeah.
necessarily think it. But if I'm being fair, I could see how someone would look at that and say, oh, think you're better than I am? Oh, so you're holy, are you? You're just going to talk this stuff. Like, but I guess that's the price you pay for putting yourself out there and speaking your mind, right? Which I feel like that's all he's doing here. Cause dude, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe all this was written down. He planned it. But a lot of the stuff that he's saying feels like it's in the moment to me. It doesn't feel rehearsed at all.
Yeah, I think that that's kind of the magic of this album. Um, that it doesn't feel forced at all. It doesn't ever feel like um any of these songs feel out of place. It doesn't ever feel like the message is out of place. Um, it's all very comforting. That's the best compliment I can give to this album is that it's
Mm.
a very comforting and accessible album.
That's a great compliment, actually. I agree. We said it's a concept album, kids. It is. It's a storyline told from the POV of a veteran returning home from Vietnam to find a country full of injustice, violence, and oppression. Um, I mean, look, go back and listen to it through those eyes, and you begin to hear, oh, I get it. Even if you didn't get it before, now it'll mean something different to you. So yeah, and it's real easy for musicians to catch grief for taking an anti-war or anti-government or anti-whatever stance because it's like, well, easy for you to say, you're rolling in money and you've got it made and you produce music for a living and you don't know anything. Why should we listen to you? And I'm like, people are missing the point, man. Music can change the world. Music has changed the world. I don't care what anybody says. Music has the power today to change the world again if we let it. I mean, I completely see it. I mean, dude, not for nothing. If I'm back in the day when Vietnam's going on and I'm of the age where I can be drafted, I'm terrified because I'm like, I don't want to go. Like,
Yeah.
why do I have to go fight? I don't want anything to do with this war. I mean, dude, can you imagine?
Yeah, that's definitely one of those things where, can't relate because, I grew up after the draft was over and done with. So there was never a situation where I felt like I had to go to war. Um, so I just can't quite understand that feeling. But I do think this album does a great job of presenting whoever the main character of the album is being this fish out of water when he gets back and just seeing how much the world has changed. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find a more well-known first few lines of a song than what's going on. Like I think
Mhm.
everybody knows, mother, mother. Everybody knows at least the first few lines of this song. Like if you don't, then where have you been? You been living under a rock?
Everybody can sing it. Everybody can sing it. 100%. Yeah, everybody can sing it. Dude, I off topic a bit. I was in my senior year of high school when the Gulf War happened. And we were in the library. I'll never forget this. We were in the library watching news, and there was rumors because they had begun as Desert Shield, right? Until like 3 days later, a week later, it became Desert Storm, which means we're going in. And there was I want to say it was an NBA game, and the guy came over to the PA, and he announces, "We have sent troops. We are invading." Like we were, however it was he said it. That crowd of 15,000 people, whatever it was, stood and cheered for this at once, like at across the board. And I remember thinking, this is terrifying to me. Like, and I wasn't thinking draft. I was just thinking, why are we celebrating this? Like, I'll never forget how that felt. And that was, I already knew I wasn't cut out for military. And then that kind of confirmed it for me. It's like, yeah, I don't have the mindset to pick up a gun and go hurt someone. I just don't have the mindset. Like I don't, and no disrespect to our service kids, everybody relax. But I personally I just don't, I don't know. It was scary to see that reaction because I'm like, why are we all okay with this? Like, I get it. Hussein was human garbage. He was, no doubt. But like, we're happy about going to war. We're celebrating and we're cheering in an NBA arena. What are we doing here? I don't know, dude. It felt odd. And I look back at the footage of Vietnam and musicians like Marvin who spoke up and Lennon who spoke up, a lot of other people who spoke up and said, this is nonsense. Why are we there? Yeah, it's crazy. But to your point, dude, the lyrics in this song are just, we don't need to escalate. You see, war is not the answer. Falling in love can conquer hate. Dude, in the hands of any other singer songwriter, that could have become just a silly platitude that everyone else is already talking about on a sign that they're holding up protesting the war. But with this guy's voice behind it, it's a work of art because that's he could sing. What's the old saying, Phil? You could sing the phone book and still win a Grammy. That's this guy. Like, man, what an amazing song this is, dude.
Yeah, I think a good amount of how uh, comforting and peaceful this album sounds, even though it's hitting some pretty heavy topics, is Marvin Gaye's voice. I think he has just such a rich and amazing voice that it. I don't know. It just makes everything he's saying. It's almost soothing. It's like I hear you. It's almost like I don't care how well somebody presents an idea to you. If if you're sitting and listening to them and it's like, boy, I can't get into how he's presenting this idea to me, then yeah, probably gonna miss a lot of it. But I think when you've got Marvin Gaye of all people singing all this amazing stuff to you, then it's kind of hard to dismiss it.
Yeah, for sure. And the way he presents it, like he's not screaming, it's not fast tempo, it's not heavy guitar. He could have done
No,
all that if he'd wanted to, but
yeah,
there I think, dude, I think a lot of it is the way you deliver the message, which is why I think Bob Dylan got as hot as he did in the beginning and was loved by people like John and Paul and a lot of other musicians around the world, but also why he ruffled the feathers of so many people in our government. Because, like, go back and listen to Masters of War Kids off the freewheeling Bob Dylan. You'll know what I'm talking about. That song is startling in what he says because he just sounds like he's pissed off. Enough of this. Why are we doing this? What are we doing to each other? Why are we over there? Like, whew, man. The first time I heard that song was as a man when I heard that song, not a kid. And it
yeah.
shook me. I mean, it's crazy, man.
Yeah. I also think that there's when you realize that this album's a concept album and you realize the voice behind it is a guy that went to the Vietnam War, this wasn't going to be a guy that tried to scream his ideas to you or you know go over the top with it because this is a guy that's kind of weary. He's been through all of the insanity of war. So yeah, he's going to present his ideas in a more somber way.
Yeah, he's low key, even keeled. Yeah, for sure. I get that. But again, like I said, it's all in the presentation. People are more apt to listen if you're not screaming at them. Now, is that to suggest that NWA had it wrong? No, it's not saying
No.
that. I'm not saying Public Enemy had it wrong either. They each had, you know, they're well within their rights to say what they said, and who am I to take that away from them? But I'm just saying sometimes if you're trying to gauge the audience and you got a message, I think you have to read the room, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, and I
Uh,
think it does have a lot to do with the tone of the song too, doesn't it? What you're singing about.
yeah, I think tone matters, but I also think that it always depends on who's delivering the message and
Mm.
how they choose to use their tone. Because you're absolutely right. NWA shows a very different approach, but we listen to them because there's authority and there's power behind their voices. It's kind of like listening to Tupac, and every time I think about Tupac, I always think about that clip of him talking about. Um, how aggressive music got and how people didn't like it at first. And he was like, well, if we're knocking on the door and telling you every day we're hungry and we're coming with this nice song, we're hungry, we need some food. We're
Oh,
hungry, we need some food.
yeah.
And you're not listening to me. You're not listening to me. And we keep coming singing the same song every day. At some point it's gonna stop being we're hungry, we need some food. We're kicking in the door, give us some food.
I remember that. That's awesome. That's one. Yeah, yeah. That was a highlight of his career, in my opinion. The way he phrased that, I thought was awesome. Yeah. Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Ready's Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark 6M Podcast sent you. In terms of this, as we said, it's a concept album, kids. One song bleeds into the next. You almost don't realize what's going on has ended when What's Happening, Brother begins, because it's the same sound. It's the same. You almost think it's a continuation of what's going on. It doesn't feel like it's a different song. What makes What's Happening, Brother different than what's going on? Or do you think there even is a difference?
I think that they flow so well together because I think what's going on is kind of an introduction to him. If you're visualizing it in your head, it's like him narrating everything he's seeing when he's walking around. And I think what's happening, brother, is more personal, like he's talking directly to someone in particular. That's just at least my take on it.
I see that. Yeah, like he's sitting on a park bench talking to somebody. Yeah. I mean, can't find no work, can't find no job, my friend. Money's tighter than it's ever been. Say, man, I just don't understand what's going on across this land. Dude, what year is he singing about here? Because it sounds a lot like now.
That's the other part about this album. This album is still incredibly relevant.
Yeah. That's important, right? I mean, for any album, isn't it? I mean, there has to be I'm a fan of Devo. I think that Mark Mothersbaugh is a genius. I really do. He's a great songwriter. And Devo was ahead of its time in a lot of ways. But does Devo age well in terms of their music, or are they a product of their time? Were they an experimentation and it fits where it fits? Would it work today? That's just off the top of my head, but like to your point, this album works all the time, no matter what era we're talking about.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's certain stuff that at the time, like, are you kidding me? When I discovered Linkin Park and being like an adolescent and being angry and being sad about everything that we thought at the time being in college was like the worst thing that would ever happen to us. And so, no, absolutely. At that time, all of that stuff was extremely relatable, but I can't really listen to some of that stuff and scream at the top of my lungs with Chester Bennington like I did then in my 30s. Like, I still love that music, but I don't feel it as much as I did then.
Right. Nirvana. Is Nirvana the same for you? Like, do you feel it anymore? Does it still resonate with you?
I'm a little bit too old sometimes for some of that stuff. Like, as much as I enjoy some punk rock stuff, it's like I've kind of like I still love it, but I'm not still, a rebellious teenager that wants to, run out and scream all this stuff to the top of my lungs.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that. Yeah. I know where you're coming from. Track number 3 does feel like a different song, and that's not a bad thing. But I do see the transition. Flying High in the Friendly Sky is track number 3, and it runs for, let's see, What's Happening, Brother ran for 257. Friendly Sky runs for 340. It's one of the longest songs, not the longest song. That one's coming. One of the longest, I'd say medium to longest song on the album. Flying High in the Friendly Sky is a bit of a different tune. And listen, not for nothing, kids. I don't think I cleared this up for anyone listening here. I don't have a skip on this album, personally. There's not a skip from anywhere. I can't say that I love this song as much as I love the first two, but however, I don't dislike this song at all. This feels more like a message song to me, maybe the other two do, for some reason. But again, it's not a bad thing for me. What's your take on Flying High in the Friendly Sky?
Yeah, Flying High is just one of those very iconic songs off this album, because it's just like, again, when I say that accessible, inviting, like his sound on this song, it's amazing. I mean, you're not human if you don't sit and turn this song on and immediately start singing the backing vocals for this every time he sings something, because I think that's a part of the appeal of this. He does it several times on this album where there's almost a call and response. And so when he starts the song and he's saying "Flying High," you immediately want to come in and sing along "Flying High."
Mm.
And
Yeah.
it's just such a great song. I think it's been sampled a few times, but I know for sure someone sampled it for I think that's Most Def's second album, with Modern Marvel on it, which is also a great song. But it samples the last few minutes of the song, which has like that great breakdown in it.
Yeah, good call. I mean, without guys like Marvin, especially James Brown. Let's be clear. Without guys like this, hip hop doesn't happen.
Oh
es-
no,
Especially rap, because who's there to sample? Much in the same way, how many bands would not be here if not for the Beatles today? You know what I mean?
yeah, I mean guys like James Brown, uh, Isaac Hayes,
Mm.
uh, the Isley Brothers, a lot of
Curtis
those guys.
Mayfield. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of those guys that got sampled a lot. Yeah, there would not be any hip hop.
Flying High in the Friendly Sky is about Marvin's drug use, which I don't know if I knew that explicitly. Supposedly, he was smoking weed quite a bit during that time, but he also freebasing cocaine, which is pretty hardcore, kids, for being honest, in the late 70s. So that happened after the fact here. But Flying High refers to the high effect. Um,
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely get that once you know that, but it just
mhm.
has this very euphoric sound to it
Mm.
that even if you didn't know that, it was just like it's kind of one of those groovy everything is everything songs.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Yeah. And for me, I mean, the drug use aside, I don't get bad vibes from this song at all.
No, it's easy listening like the entire album.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so Save the Children, number 4. Let's see. Yep, Save the Children's number 4. So, and again, Flying High bleeds directly into this song. And I think one and two are definitely connected. I would say 3 and 4 are definitely, they're all connected, right? But in my head, 1 and 2 are definitely connected. 3 and 4 are definitely connected. And Save the Children feels like a continuation um, of Flying High in the Friendly Sky. So this song, Save the Children, runs for 3 minutes and 4 seconds. Marvin's got songwriting credit on every song here, kids. Not for nothing, but yeah. Again, wrote all the songs, produced the album. Just again, a talent. What a talent this guy was. Um, but this is that song where he's speaking most of it. This is like a spoken word song. He's singing in the background, but again, like you said earlier, call and response. So this song, Marvin, according to this, is speaking about how the world and how it's becoming tarnished. Talks about how the children will not grow up in a good world and how they will suffer, taking place after the Vietnam War in America was our first loss. People Lose Hope, being the least acclaimed song on the album, speaks to its impact, but does show a very important message. Would you view this as being the least acclaimed song on the album? Because I think it's got a huge message here.
I don't know if it's the most acclaimed, but I feel like it's one of the most memorable records on the album for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean that's both because of just its usage and other things, and all of my formative memories with this song, like because it has this great call and response to it that um, even if you're not a great singer, like again, it's just hard to not follow along in this song. Like um, when he gets to the point when it breaks down and he's really actually singing towards the end of the song, so much so that you're so into this song with him. By the time he starts actually singing, you're singing with him because it's just such a great record, and it's such a dour message in some ways, um, but at the same time, it's inviting. It's not it's never any point in this where I feel like it's not accessible.
Accessible is 100% the right term, in my opinion. We spoke earlier about how it depends on the messenger, not just the message, but the messenger and how he delivers the message. Could someone record this album brand new today if this were brand new? You know what I'm saying? Like wrote all the material. Would he?
Yeah.
It just feels like we're in such a cynical time, man. How many people look at this and say, what's this? You know what I mean? Would it still work? You think? Would it? Is this only Marvin's stuff? You know what I mean?
Um, I think you could. I think the right artist could record something like this today. But I think there's a simplicity to this song that a lot of people wouldn't do. I think that a lot of people would be tempted to oversing it. Because there's never any
Mm.
question in any of this that we know that Marvin Gaye is a great singer.
Mm.
But I think he spends a lot of the song, like I said, inviting us in by doing the great call and response and doing kind of spoken word stuff that it gets you to really listen. And so again, when he really starts singing, it's like you're with him. You're with every word he's saying.
Yeah, yeah, good call. Yeah, you're with him. Like you, it's like going on a journey with this guy, right? You take the journey with him for sure. Um,
Yeah, I'm telling you, and I mean, this is one of those songs where, like I said earlier, my formative years of listening to this is with my mother, and so when it gets to uh uh when he starts singing and he gets into the "But who really cares" line, come on, man,
mm.
it's one of the highlights of the album, in my opinion. It could be just that I'm just remembering my mother singing, and my mother just had a great voice. It's just I don't know. For me, it's one of the best songs on the album.
Was she? Was he her favorite artist?
I don't know if I would say that, but I mean, he was just so important to a lot of black people. I mean, I would say that there is no barbecue or no family function that I've ever been to where Marvin is not played at some point.
Oh wow, yeah.
I mean, it's just certain artists for black people where their music is always played, like Earth, Wind and Fire, Isley Brothers. You're gonna hear a record from one of these guys at some point in the day,
Mhm.
uh, if you're at a family function.
It's a great soundtrack. 100%. So we transition from this to God is Love, which is track number 5. And again, another easy transition. This one's a little bit more up tempo. This one's back to the, singing the lyrics instead of it's not a spoken word song. This one runs 2 minutes 30 seconds. Comes in as the shortest song on the album. Again, this is in the hands of anyone else, Phil. I would argue this is preaching. This is this is too much. I just don't get that from him at all. And I don't mean to keep taking that stance as if I feel that way because I don't. I don't know, dude. I guess you get jaded by the time you're living in sometimes, and it's hard not to. You know what I mean? The way people can be toward each other, but like, and honestly, without getting intensely deep here, as we tend to do, and that's fine. My views on religion have changed over the years. I don't have the same views I have as a kid, and it's maybe a topic for another time. But as we sing about God is love, and we mention Jesus and stuff, I'm kind of detached from that, right? But I never question his heart. I never question that he's coming from a very sincere place. Dude, in fact, I would compare this album and him to John Coltrane quite a bit. That they both had demons, they both had challenges, but man, when Coltrane was on his game, it was like going to church. It was so good. And that's what this album is. What do you think about God is Love?
Yeah, I agree. I'm not a big religious person, and I'm a guy that grew up in church. My family went to church. I went to Catholic school, um, so I've grown up around religion. But as an adult, I've been a little jaded on religion, and that's not to say that I don't believe in God. Um, I've had a lot of experiences with people around church and around religion. Um, that I'm just it makes you question everything. Like, oh, if that person's religious and they're still not a great person, then what is really the purpose of it, right? Like,
Mm,
if religion is supposed to, you know, enhance, people and get people to see a better way, then why is it that a lot of people that are very religious also still do dirt? Doesn't really make sense to me. But again, that's a cynical adult thing. Um, um, but the great thing about this song is that if you do believe in God, I feel like it's hard to listen to this song and not feel like this is an extension of God, right? If you
Mm,
believe in God and you're listening to Marvin sing this song, there's no way that you can't feel like um, Marvin was not put here to sing this song. Um, Man, and there's so many other sad things about this. Like listening to this song, it is hard for me to listen to it and not cry because, man, like thinking of Chadwick Boseman singing it in his last movie. It's like I don't know if you've ever seen that scene of him singing it from Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. It's really sad.
no.
It's really really sad, and I'm sure you can
Ooh.
see it on YouTube somewhere. And has a great voice. It's just so stirring because it's like one of the last things he's done as an actor. Uh, Sad.
Man, that's powerful. I mean, I don't know if he. Well, there you go, Phil. I don't know if Bozeman had the height to play him, but I was going to ask you earlier, who do you cast as Marvin Gaye? But I mean, Bozeman played several legends in his time during his career. I mean, man, whew, I don't, yikes.
There,
What could have been?
there's something so incredible to me about Chadwick's story and how he knew that he wasn't well, um, and he took that time not being well to make all of this great content and tell the stories of all these incredible Black people, whether that be James Brown or Thurgood Marshall, or giving people that didn't really believe and didn't see themselves in superhero stuff Black Panther before he died. It's really a legendary run when you really think about it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, every actor, I'm sure, is jealous of um, the filmography this guy had. I would be. Um,
Yeah. Not a
yeah,
not a not a wasted film in there. I'm sure he's done bad films here and there, but yeah, it doesn't feel like he wasted a lot of time. And that could have been that by then he knew that he didn't have that much time, and so he wanted to take projects that meant something. Um, but yeah, really amazing. But yeah, another good part of why I said I have to be in the mood to hear this album because there are
mm,
definitely songs on here where I'm just like, yeah, cut that off.
yeah. That's fair. And to your point about what we talked about God here and spirituality and whatnot, faith, right? I mean, if you have to have some kind of proof that there's God, maybe the evidence of God is that something like this can exist during a time of war, and that a guy who was flawed as gay was still had the voice of an angel, if there is such a thing, and could present this as sort of a man testimony's really taking it too far, but as a message, I guess, like we got to do better. We have to do better. Like there's got to be another way here. Like, and dude, when all else fails, what does mankind look to? When all else fails, they look up. They look up, which is understandable. Like in my darkest hours, and I've had some. We all have. We've all had dark hours. No sense getting into it, but like I think we've all probably looked up at some point and said, "I need help. I can't do this anymore. I need you." You know, who's there? I don't know. Not for me to say, but yeah. Again, if you need proof that there's something up there, or maybe there's just something here, if we would just tap into it and be better to each other, maybe that's what this album is about anyway. I don't know. Maybe it's how you interpret it.
Yeah, I think a good part of the message of this album is kind of losing a belief in people and then refinding it.
Mm.
And so like I said, even if you're not the most religious person, even if you don't believe in God, it'd be hard for me to listen to something like God is love, and not, want to believe in people.
Yeah, good call. Um, that song bleeds directly into "Mercy, Mercy Me." Um, in parentheses, the ecology. And I would argue this may be, not maybe, this has got to be top 3 songs. Okay. God, that's hard to do with this guy had so many hits. I was going to do like a top 3. Now I'm up to top 4. Because for me, his top 4 songs would be What's Going On, Heard It Through the Grapevine. Um, uh, oh man, I just had it on the tip of my tongue and I lost it. Mercy, Mercy Me, the Ecology would be here, and Sexual Healing. That would be, in my opinion, his top 4 most well known songs. I mean, dude, you can argue that this song's on par with the first song of the album, can't you?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when you say that people had signature performances, I think What's Going On is there. I think Mercy Mercy Me is there as well. Um, yeah, anybody that hears Mercy Mercy Me that knows that's a Marvin song. Like it's undeniable.
Hmm. Where did all the blue skies go? Poison is the wind that blows from the north and south and east. I mean, it's very simple. There's only 4 verses here. It's a very short song, but like it doesn't need to be long, right? He gets his point across. It only runs 3 minutes 5 seconds. It's not much longer than God Is Love.
Yeah.
Marvin has sole writing credit on this song. What is it about this song, man, that like I guess that maybe the answer is it just connects to everything else, but it just sounds like someone sitting back looking at how the world is and just saying, "Oh man, look how things have changed, right? Like look how things used to be versus what they are now. Like this is not what it was supposed to be." You know what I mean? Just sounds like frustration on some level.
Yeah, it sounds like frustration, but it never comes across that way because it
Mm.
always just the tone he sings in is just so beautiful. The instrumentation on the song is so beautiful. Like you could feel all the frustration in the words he's saying, but it's all it's all conveyed in the lyrics. It's never feels like he raises in tone on the song to it never feels like he wants to like yell out at any point in the song.
That's fair. And he definitely could have, and it would have been understood. But like, and before anyone says anything about like tree huggers or like people trying to save the earth or save the planet, dude, he's got a verse in here. What about this overcrowded land? How much more abuse from man can she stand? And that's all he said. But in 2 lines, he got the point across. Like, how much more can we take from the earth until it just taps out, until it's over, until we're done? Like, dude, those 2 lines alone, I mean, what is it? 20 words there? There's nothing. And he got over so much in just 2 lines, man. That's genius writing right there.
It is. Um, yeah, just tremendous lyrics throughout the song. A great vocal performance on it. Um, I am a big fan of the breakdown at the end of the song. Um, I'm pretty sure it was sampled as well for a rap song. I'm trying to remember which one it is off the top of my head, but oh, it's uh it's Lupe Fiasco song. It's Pins and Needles, which I don't even know if he released it as a like studio song, but that's definitely, and I think it was sampled for something else,
Mm.
but it's Marvin. He's been sampled countless times.
Oh God, no kidding. Um, so it's amazing going from that song to this one. This one's got a different vibe, and we're talking about track number 7, Right On. This song, every time I hear it, makes me think of Santana's Evil Ways. You got to change your evil ways. Every time I hear it, because of the sound, it just
Yeah.
reminds me of that. Like it's
Um,
still got the same vibe of the album feel, but it's different at the same time.
yeah, it would have been very easy for the song to sound dated because it definitely has all the sounds from that time period. Whether it be the flute, like all the flute from it, that's all stuff that makes me think like all of the movies from that time period and like all of the other sounds from that time period, like Isaac Hayes, like I said. But it doesn't sound dated at all. It almost sounds like an encapsulation of like this great time period. Um, like all the just like I said, the flutes, the I think that's a Guerrero that's playing. That's very prominent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's just great. I think This is another song where the instrumentation is great, and it never feels like it overpowers Marvin's voice.
Mm, good call. I mean, you got to say a lot of that has to do with the fact that he produced the album also.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Definitely has a Latin vibe. So the Santana comparison, I think, is spot on. I mean, it's got a Latin flow to it for sure. Um,
yeah. I mean, I don't know if this is just innovation of listening through it on a streaming platform and stuff, but incredibly well mastered album. Like none of it feels like his vocals are muddy on it. All of his vocals are very crisp and clear, and it always feels like it's perfect with the instrumentation. It doesn't seem like his vocals are just like sitting on top of like this dense instrumentation. It all feels like it mixes together perfectly.
hmm, yeah. Well said. Longest song on the album, too, kids. 7 minutes and 20 seconds. Does it feel that long to you?
No, it doesn't. It's a groove. It's one of those you could just cut it on and just leave it. But that's
Mm,
most of the album.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love this song a lot. You're right. It could sound it. All right, it does sound dated to me, but I don't. That's not a bad thing for me. The
No.
instrumentation, yes, yes, it's of a particular era, but I don't get hung up on that. The word date is not a bad thing for me when it comes to this particular song. I don't. It's not a negative, is what I'm trying to say. Like it still works for me. I still enjoy listening to it.
Yeah.
Do you have a skip on this album? I haven't asked you that.
I don't.
Mm,
I
same.
don't. I feel like it's a perfect album, start to finish.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't argue with that at all actually. But yeah, it again, it's it's not doing a whole lot here, but what it's doing, actually, I take that back. This song does probably more than any song does on the album in terms of it's layered. There's some texture to it. It's got grit to it. But you could argue the way you feel like that about any song, I suppose. But to me, that's just how it sounds. It sounds. Some of us were born with money to spend. Some of us were born for races to win. Some of us are aware that it's good for us to care. Some of us feel the icy wind of poverty blowing in the air. Where else can you use icy wind of poverty and make it fit? Right? Because again, dude, that on its face, like, could be hokey in the hands of anybody else. But again, he's a master at what he's doing. Like,
Man, again, I feel like the lyrics here are just so accessible. Everything you just said there, I could have easily came back and said that, white privilege is something that affects all of us, and some people don't know what it's like to live in a world where poverty affects everything you do.
mm,
And that isn't as well said as the lyrics here. Even though
yeah,
I just summarized it, but it doesn't sound as good as that.
no. For those of us who live where peace is craved. Man, what? For those of us who live where hatred is enslaved. For those of us who live a life surrounded by good fortune and wealth. Talk about it. Yikes. Man, oof, what a song. And
Yeah.
again, like the breakdown here is nice. The horn is a nice touch. Everything kind of slows down to a slower pace, and it just feels like it just feels like put your feet up, close your eyes, put your head back, and listen to this song, and just let it do something to you. Like just feel it, right? Because like this album does a certain thing for me that other albums don't do. So yeah,
Yeah.
um, you could make the argument this album's not the same without this song, couldn't you?
No, I don't think that it is. I think that man, when you realize it's a concept album, I think the way that this album is sequenced is perfect. Because I think that it hits all of the right notes when it's supposed to hit them. Um, it would have been really easy to say that What's Going On or Mercy Mercy are highlights of the album, so you should have hit those last, because a lot of albums do that. They come and they save the best songs for the last three records. But no, you're sequencing it in terms of the story you're trying to tell. And so I think Right On fits on the album, but I think it's in a perfect place.
Yeah, yeah. The sequence. We've talked a lot about how you begin an album, how you end an album. And in case anyone's taking notes, Jay-Z knows how to do that. He wrote the book on it, in my opinion. How to begin the album, how to end it. Like Marvin knew too, man, right? Like he knew how to begin this album, how to end it for sure.
Yeah, great artists that make good albums know how to open an album well and close an album on a high note.
Mhm. Um, the next track, Holy Holy, which is spelled Wholy, as in being whole, and then holy, Holy, which is a great play on words. This is another going to church kind of song. Nothing wrong with that, right? But it's another plea for we got to figure this out. Stop hating, stop hurting. We got to figure this out. I mean, it's how you feel about this song, man? How's this one hit you?
I think it hits kind of in the same vein that Flying High does. That it's kind of a vibe to it. Um, Even if you're not totally invested in the themes of this song or the message, I feel like it's a vibe. I feel like if you're in a good mood and you're just throwing something on that's easy listening, like this isn't a skip for me.
Yeah, and again, it's I'll say it. I did this song. This song is fairly well preaching to you, but I still don't think that's a bad thing. Because what's the old at this point it's probably cliche depending on how you use it, but he's speaking his truth, right? He really is. Like dude, none of this feels like I got to get a Grammy. Oh man, I got to win something. Dude, for all I know, maybe that was in his mind. I don't have any idea. But man, it
Yeah,
just feels like it flows like this feels like it was recorded over the course of an evening, all songs. And not because the instrumentation is simple, because it's not, but it's just there's just such a flow of consciousness here, which I guess is the point, right?
yeah, yeah. I don't. And even if that was his even if that was his idea of what he wanted to do with this album of going, man, I want this to be award winning and all these other things. I never get that idea listening to this album. This doesn't
Mm.
feel that way at all. This doesn't feel like a award grab. This doesn't feel like a attention grab. This feels like all things that he wanted to express.
Yeah, he's like I said, speaking his truth. This is a story he wants to tell, so he's telling it. Yeah. Um, I don't want to flip past this song too fast, but I really want to get to the last track. Not because I want to finish, but because I just love the last song so much. Um, this was again a fairly short song, and it leads to the last song of the album, Inner City Blues. Also, Make Me Want to Holler. And dude, you began the album with What's Going On. Are you kidding me? Then you end with this. Like, I don't know if you're producing music at the time this album comes out, your hopes of having a hit are probably over because this thing is again at Phil perfect album. Talk about how this song ties everything together because it really does, right?
Yeah, I feel like there are artists that are still to this day trying to make me want to holler. Like I think that's just how impactful this song was, how impactful this album was. I think there are a lot of people that have tried to reproduce the sound because when this hit or when people heard it for the first time, it changed how they were making music.
Mm. 5 minutes, 16 seconds. This song runs the second longest song on the album. Really doesn't feel that way. Not to me.
No, no, I mean the album isn't that long. I feel like you can listen to the entire album in a sitting, and it doesn't feel like you're sitting there for that long.
Yeah, the way they do my life. This ain't living. This ain't living. Oh, dude, that lyric by itself. The kid call. You could call the song "This Ain't Living." Like that's really good stuff right there. Just that lyric by itself. Inflation, no chance to increase finance. Bills pile up sky high. Send that boy off to die.
Yeah, I mean I'm sure that was a frustration with a lot of people that came back from war that you when you did what everybody told you at the time was the right thing, you went and served, and when you got back there was really nothing for you. And
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of frustration about that, particularly in the 70s. um, I'm sure that there are people in the military that still go through that today. um, but it was kind of a fresh idea to express that then. 'Cause that was such a different time period. That was fresh out of, the civil rights movements in the '60s,
Hmm.
um, and, Black people didn't always have the voice to express these kind of things before then, and so to express that kind of frustration, um, about the government and about all of these, heavy things, it's still kinda new for Black artists, and that's why I said this album is just so important, and I'm not to say that Marvin Gaye was the first artist ever to make an introspective album like that, but I think that this album is so good and it did so much to enrich the culture, um, that would be hard to not try to duplicate some things he did as an artist.
Yeah, well said. I mean, this is yeah, I'm listening to it right now. Actually, God, what a song this is, man. Um, a way to tie everything together, way to bring everything home. And dude, when this song is over, you just want the album to start back over. Like, why would you go to the next album in your playlist? What's the point? Just start back over. Like, just
Y that's part of the genius of this album, because this album doesn't really wrap up in a happy ending.
no.
It kinda wraps up in the same message that the album starts in, and it's kinda like it creates this idea that this is a cyclical issue that there is no real easy answer for.
Well said. Yeah, the closing notes of this song, and for the first time on this album, there's silence after the closing notes, but you can hear it as it goes off. And then if you go immediately back to the first song, it just feels like you're right back into the moment again. It's amazing how that works. Crazy good. Crazy good. Um, in 1990, Marvin got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Why did it take so long? I can't can't answer that. Which is seems nuts to me that it did take that long. But at the time, Eddie Murphy wrote, "quote Marvin is one of the few who neither." Speaking of Eddie Murphy, Marvin is one of the few who neither grows smaller nor larger in death, but maintains a constant, almost lifelike presence. In other words, Marvin is here to stay. So eloquently put, because you can't really say that his legend looms large like Elvis or like John Lennon or like Jim Morrison. You can't really say it loom. Not really, right? I don't know if I'd argue that, but it almost feels like he's still here. Like, and his music is, of course, how it still feels that way. I mean, um, yeah. Did he do anything else in his career, in your opinion, that was this important in terms of what he brought to the world of music? I mean, he had a great career, but like as a whole, as an album, was there anything else he did, in your opinion, that could even measure this?
Uh, I mean, I think that he made such unique love music. I mean, when you think about, sexual healing, like you said, or it's like it's too late, or
Mm,
some of the stuff that he did with Tammy, and some of the more upbeat stuff he's done. I still think that he created a sound for a generation,
yeah.
even without this album. Um, I do think that this is probably his most important work, but I don't want to discount any of the other stuff that he's done, either. Um, because I mean, the guy has just had such a prolific career. Um, I know Trouble Man has turned into like this big cultural thing later as a soundtrack, for many reasons, and I know he has other highlights like, Ain't No Mountain High Enough and stuff like that. But I don't know. It's hard for me to pick out any other thing that he's known for, and that could be just that this album was just such a big part of me growing up as well.
Mm,
So I don't know. Um, I I guess just having to answer it, being put on the spot, I suppose it is probably the most important thing he's done.
yeah. Certified gold one time in the United States.
which is really crazy
500,000
when you think
copies.
about it. That
Shocking.
this shocking that this, but I guess it isn't because what this album meant. Like this wasn't an album that was really meant to sell a lot of copies. It's
Mm,
not an album that I expected to be commercially successful. I'm sure some of the singles were commercially successful, but as an album, it's kind of one of those things where it didn't need to be that.
mm. Yeah, that makes sense. It just, I don't know. You scroll down and you're looking for accolades and you're hoping to see a big laundry list of Grammys and awards. And like, yeah, that's kind of
Yeah,
it's kind of a shame.
I mean, it's just it's so different than the way a lot of black artists were presented because I'm telling you, like at some point, there was this attempt to make sure black artists crossed over, and so you had a lot of the album covers with him on the front with like a suit on, or like it had like the bright colors and stuff on it. This album, like just even like the cover of it is so different from anything else he was doing,
Mm,
and I mean just I don't know. I wasn't around, of course, for how this album was promoted, or but I'd imagine just with just the songs on it and just like the album cover that this isn't something that they were trying to push at radio stations or they were trying to push to get him into nightclubs and stuff to sing.
oh wow. Um, Jeez. No, I was reading some notes here about everything. I don't know. It continues to amaze me how it didn't. I don't know, man. But we kicked the show off, Phil, talking about how it's made all these lists and all these rankings about how we ranked it here on the podcast. Dude, that list goes on for a country mile. Dude, look it up. It's insane how long the list is of top 100, top 500, top 50, top 10, top 20. I mean, it's getting its flowers. Whether it did in the immediacy of its release, it's definitely got them in the years since. And you know, um, you're jaded, Phil, by what you listen to, by albums that connect to you emotionally. I am. Everyone is to a certain degree, right? Bands you like, and this one means a lot to you because of your family. And I've got music like that as well. But like, there's at the end of the day, you can, as you said earlier, you cannot argue the quality and the amazing performance of this album as a whole. This thing is just, we've gushed over it for almost an hour and 20 minutes, but man, we could keep going because this is, again, Phil, it's a work of art. I mean, imagine if he didn't have this in his career. I mean, imagine if he, for whatever reason, you know, didn't do this album. He died in 84. Dude, he was 44, Phil.
Yeah,
Like, I'm older now than he was when he was killed. Like, what?
yeah, yeah. Very young to die. Uh, yeah. I don't know, but it's something like a lot of albums that aged a lot better with time. A lot of those albums weren't commercially successful at the time.
Mm,
Um, like when I think of some of like the best blues albums of that era and stuff, I'm sure a lot of the stuff didn't make a lot of money for those artists. Um, but
mm.
they were important for what they did for the culture, and how they inspired other artists that came after them. Uh, like I'd venture to say like there are a lot of blues albums that didn't sell well, but something like Disraeli Gears that was highly influenced by it probably went platinum.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Because,
I
like,
guarantee you there's somebody somewhere that Marvin inspired that made a lot of money. um, Way more money than that album made.
yeah, I'm not going to argue that. And, let's be honest with everybody here. Muddy Waters invented electricity. I'm just saying it's the fact. It's not just a quote, it's a fact. Like, and how many people made a lot more money off of doing that kind of music than he ever did, which is a shame. It's a
Yeah,
crying shame. It's ridiculous.
for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of things that are like some of the top albums that I feel that probably didn't do nearly as well as I thought they should have done. Uh, so I mean, I don't know, and I mean this is the '70s. It still was just such a different time.
Mm.
Uh, the record business was just so different then. The way black artists were marketed was just so different.
Yeah, and I mean, you could look at any era and make I guess an argument for and against. I suppose. I mean, we mentioned NBA earlier. You can look at that and say, well, those guys made their money, and they did it. They had a career. They're icons. They're Hall of Famers, I guess, and the movie and all. They had individual careers. Yeah, but the white guy getting rich off of them, like, come on, come on, man, what are we
Uh,
talking about? Like,
I mean, yeah, and I mean it's not like Marvin Gaye's estate is not pretty well off. I mean,
hmm,
when you think of songs that are out there and stuff that's been sampled constantly, I mean, they just had that dispute over "Give It Up" because of what blurred lines. And so those are just songs that are going to stay in public consciousness.
hmm. Well, I'm very glad this album is still here. I'm glad it's never gone anywhere, and I don't think it ever will. I don't. I think this album's always going to be with us, which is a good thing. Um,
Yeah.
well, kids, there you have it. There is what's going on, and I don't know if we gushed enough, but as I said, we could gush another hour and a half, and it would all be true, and it wouldn't just be opinion based. These are facts. Um, so, Phil, as we wrap this thing up, let's try to put it in a nutshell. Give me your last word on what's going on.
I would say that what's going on is not just one of the most important albums of Marvin's career. I would say it's one of the most important and iconic albums of all time. I would say that it rightfully belongs on any list that names it one of the top albums of the last 30 or 40 years. Um, it belongs there. It belongs on all of the lists, and it deserves all the accolades it gets. It's hard
Mm.
to say anything is perfect, but this album is about as close to perfect as you can get.
Yeah, I mean, and look, you can explain, kids, you can explain an album however you want to. Whatever means something to you, however you want to say it, you can say it. If you want to say that this is an historic album by a black artist, if that's what you want to say it. If you want to say that this is an amazing album and a historic album for the culture, you can say it. I'm okay, honestly, with whatever you want to say when you compliment this album. But this is an historic album. Period. I this stands shoulder to shoulder with anything that's ever been done, in my opinion. And man, that's a huge statement because a lot of good music has been recorded over the years by a lot of different kinds of people. But this is this album accomplished a lot of things, but it also stands a test of time. Again, one of the greatest albums ever written by a phenomenal performer and singer songwriter who I, Phil. I know we're ending this, but like, do you think Marvin gets his due? I mean, I would imagine a movie would bring it full circle and would put this back on people's minds and remind people of just how important he was. But do you personally feel like he gets the credit he deserves now?
I think he absolutely does. I think it depends on who
Hmm.
you're talking to. Um, I think for an entire generation, it would be ludicrous to call this guy underrated.
Hmm.
But I think for maybe younger audiences, maybe I don't know. I haven't talked to a lot of people outside of my age group and asked them what they think of Marvin, but I think even a lot of them will give it up to at least something from his catalog that they've heard. Like it'd be impossible at this point to not hear anything from this man's catalog and know that that's Marvin Gaye. Uh, but I guess it depends. I guess it depends on what age group you're in.
Yeah, that's fair. Um, well, listen, everybody. If you don't agree with any of that, you're wrong. And usually I don't tell people that, but you're wrong. Because, as we always like to say on this show and the main event, Everything's subjective. Not this. Don't argue with me. I don't want to hear it. This is a classic. And he gets his credit from fans, but also from other musicians who saw the genius that this guy possessed. I'm with you. I feel like I don't know. I guess I just want to see him on a pedestal a little bit more in terms of being praised for what he brought. But listen, kids, if we get a movie, you can be guaranteed, as long as it's good. I mean, we get the right actor in the role, and the story is together. It's not Queen Part 2, okay? But it's a little bit of Ray. It's a little bit of Walk the Line. It's a little bit of the Buddy Holly story, where you're going factual, but you're also talking about, the genius that was this artist. Even to the Elvis flick, man. I mean, like, a lot of truth in that film as well. So we will see what happens, kids. Stay tuned for that. I'm hopeful, if and when it happens, that it is indeed a classic that we will be talking about. And if it happens, you can be pretty well guaranteed we'll cover it here on the 6M. But in the meantime, that is what's going on. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.